Asking because I, a 25-year-old male, have not been as active as I should be in the dating scene. Most of what I have had were a couple of flings. I am facing enlistment soon, and dating now would just make things difficult down the line. Your thoughts? Story 1. Probably that time I accidentally had my dating app preferences set wrong and got contacted by 6 gay men in one day before I figured out the issue. I have literally never been complimented that much in my entire life. Story 2. When I was 20, I had a girl who worked with me at a local restaurant corner me and asked me to be intimate with her. I told her no thanks, then went home to play video games with friends instead. That was probably the peak. I have not dated at all otherwise. Story 3. From age 25 to 29, I think I just stopped caring and became much more confident and genuine because the only thing I cared about was working on my dissertation. I had multiple dates, several short-term relationships, and 2 long-term relationships. Now I am married and could not be happier. Story 4. In my late 20s, after my first wife and I separated, I was dating casually for about 2 years. I never considered myself very attractive, maybe a 6 or 7 out of 10, but I was making it work. Story 5. I'm 29 now, 1 year out of a relationship. While I have no issues getting dates when I actually meet someone, I am constantly working and exhausted. In my early to mid-20s, I would be out all the time. I would meet a girl, she would bring her friends, and we would hang out with my friends. My friend would meet a girl, she would bring her friends. It was a cycle of just meeting people. Now everyone has settled down and does not want to go out. Wives do not have attractive friends. When I do meet a woman, it is definitely a lot easier. Story 6. Early to mid-30s was the peak for me. I was established in my career and in good shape. Confidence followed, and things just came together. Story 7. From the ages of 23 to 27, I was in the best shape of my life, worked at a bar in a progressive city, and had plenty of free time. Tinder was at the height of its popularity, and I made good use of it. Story 8. I feel like I have not really reached my peak yet, or anywhere close to it, honestly. I do not put myself out there as much as I should. Story 9. In retrospect, in my late teens and early 20s, I had the most potential, but I lacked the maturity to act effectively on it. Story 10. I can confidently say I have not hit my peak yet. The fact that my dating life has not started is immaterial to this conversation. Story 11. When I was about 20 to 22, I had a blast moving to a new city, hanging out, partying, and meeting new women all the time for short-term fun. I also got single around 2012 and experienced Tinder when it was new, exciting, and focused on gaining as many users as possible. I entered my current relationship before they started monetizing the app, and from what I see from my friends who are single, it is not as good now. Story 12. My late 30s and early 40s have been far better than any other time in my life. Although I spent most of my 20s into my 30s married, so I did not have much opportunity to find out if it would have been any good. Personally, I think it is much easier now in part because I know who I am, what I want, and I have the security of that underpinning everything about the dating process, including that I simply do not want anyone who does not want me. This makes the whole thing a lot easier. Story 13. I peaked in college and didn't even know it. I took 2 girlfriends to a fraternity date party and asked them both to go as friends because I was in a strange place where I felt no one liked me that way. I didn't know until well after that both girls were angry I invited the other because they both wanted me and thought this was their chance. Story 14. Hit my high water line at 34 to 35. Actually eased off all the dating because it was starting to impact my finances and energy a little too much. Having a couple of friends with benefits is a lot better for the life and love balance of the single lecherous male. Story 15. 26 to 27. I developed a good routine that made me look good. I was happy at work and earning enough that I did not need to worry about how often I went out each week or the kinds of dates I was going on. I had the energy to invest in socializing after work as well as on weekends. I owned my own flat, which was one of the biggest game changers. I believe how well things were going that year really reflected in my attitude on dates, which in turn made dating more positive overall. Story 16. 24 to 25 easily. I was more confident, had a lot of friends, went out more, met more girls, improved at small talk, and had more opportunities. Story 17. Dating in my late 20s was easier than in high school and college. I had a solid long-term relationship under my belt, a clear idea of what I was looking for, and was settled in my career. I didn't have many issues getting matches on dating apps or attention from women when I was younger. The bigger problem was that I was shy and somewhat clueless around women. If you are looking for a solid partner, you really need to treat dating as a job. I was consistent about using the apps for a set period after work and setting up dates. It is a proactive process where you need to put in energy to get results. Story 18. Late 20s. Then I got married, literally at my dating prime. The funny thing, though, is that I dropped that skill with no remorse. We have been together for 6 years now, and I could not care less about other women. Story 19. In 2019 and 2020, I lived in Portland, Oregon. I was 29 to 30 years old. I went home with or took women home on the first date at a rate of about 2 to 1 compared to the alternative. Portland is a great city for dating, and it was not limited to one political, social, racial, or economic group. Bend, Oregon, in 2022 was also very easy for dating. Be good-looking, whether by nature or nurture. Have a personality and more life experience than your hobby, military service, or career alone. Avoid gatekeeping interests like video games. You will succeed. Read both nonfiction and fiction. Be handy. Be able to do tasks like felling timber and defending yourself. Tell stories about yourself and your friends in various fields. Travel beyond your small hometown to interesting places. Be able to relate to her stories. Ask thoughtful questions. Guide the conversation, and involve her. Good luck. Story 20. I'm 29, and without trying to sound arrogant, I've always had a great dating life. However, I believe that, especially as a man, you have the opportunity to improve it as you age. More people can get by with just natural good looks in their late teens and early 20s, but as you age, if you focus on staying in shape, maintaining your appearance, growing your career, and developing as a person, you stand out more and more. There are far fewer in shape, well-groomed men with good skin in their late 30s and 40s than in their early to mid-20s. If you make an effort to be one of those few, you will always do well. Story 21. If peak refers to the time when I was meeting the most women and going on the most dates, it was at age 21. I was in college, living in a city full of colleges with attractive single women everywhere. I had plenty of free time. Tinder was still in its prime. As I got older, I became busier, the apps declined in quality, and I raised my standards, so I dated far fewer people. Story 22. This one time, someone asked me to come over after work, and I was too unaware to understand why at the age of 30 last year. Story 23, 27 to 35. Had a house, a master's degree, really had my life together, and was still young enough for the looks and adventures. Story 24. Dating seems important in some ways, but finding the right partner is far more important. On my third date, I found her. She was smart, good-looking, and frugal. I said that one is mine. 47 years later, she is still mine. No fooling around either. Grateful beyond belief. Story 25. I am 28 years old, and I hope my peak is still in the future. I have had a couple of relationships that did not work out and never felt truly fulfilled. Right now, I am focusing on myself, losing weight, and saving money. Hopefully, things will get better when I am 30. Story 26. I was with a girl for about 3 months when I was 17. She ended the relationship, and I went on a couple of dates shortly after with some other girls, but nothing developed. That is all. I am now 32 and consider myself completely undateable. So, I suppose 17 was the peak of my dating life, such as it was. Story 27. I'm 32 and recently divorced. I last dated when I was 26 or 27 before marriage. I've never had an easier time getting dates. I went out with a 35-year-old tonight, a 27-year-old last night, and a few weeks ago with a 45-year-old. I feel like I'm in the sweet spot of attracting any age range. Although it is at the cost of a difficult divorce, I'm taking this as a silver lining and am thankful to enjoy what I believe is the prime dating age. Story 28. When I was in college and right after, it was a lot easier to meet women. It was easier to be social just by walking outside because people expected you to be there without a specific reason. Now, everything has to be done via dating applications, and I am almost 40. All my friends are married or engaged, and they have no single friends to introduce me to. I do date occasionally, but it is a lot more work today. Story 29. In my mid-40s, I had many weeks where I went on more than 7 dates. Yes, it was fun but also exhausting. I met my now wife a couple of years ago. I could not be happier about being married to an amazing woman. Story 30. 19 to 24 was my first peak. Just out of high school, where I was mostly ignored by girls, at a workplace with many women, I became very popular. Unfortunately, I think never having gotten attention from women until then led me to cheat on every girlfriend I had at the time. That was a terrible decision, looking back at my attitude then. It is not an excuse, but the overwhelming attention I was suddenly receiving was intoxicating, and I had no experience in self-control. In my early 30s, I was dating a lot again without cheating on any of them until I got married at 36. Story 31. Modern 20s and late 30s between my longer relationships. Sometimes there is a gap where I can date around. Good times. Story 32. In my late 20s and early 30s, between the ages of 28 and 34, I traveled extensively and was intimate with many women. On average, it was about 2 per week for several years. Story 33. Technically marriage. Before that, I spent 6 months in Central America and southern Mexico. Most of that trip, I traveled alone and had a great time. I was 27 and had a lot of money from working in Alaska, which helped as well. When I first got to Alaska at the age of 23, it was really good too. I am black, and there were not many black people in Anchorage, at least not back then. The native women made themselves available quite often. Those were my peak times dating. Story 34. Determined by marital status and geography. Kansas. Story 35. If you do the work, 30 to 45 will be absolutely peak. If you do not, it will probably be high school or college. Story 36. I was between major relationships, moved to a bigger city, and began dating nearly anyone I met. Story 37. I think I am in it right now at 36 years old. Not in the sense that the options are great. Broadly speaking, we all have to sift through a bunch of nonsense, man or woman. But regarding myself, who I am, and how I carry myself in the world, I have finally started to ease into a nice social stride that I never had in my 20s or even earlier 30s. Story 38. 39. Spring to summer before COVID-19. My wife left, and our divorce was underway. I had the best time of my life. A year later, my wife and I got back together. She was impressed with some of my new skills. Story 39. Between the ages of 15 and 34, I was in a relationship 90% of the time. I am a serial monogamist. I got married in 2017. Everything was going great until COVID-19 hit and destroyed us. We separated in August 2020 and divorced a year later. I have been on 2 dates since then. I have completely lost my confidence. I am not horrible looking, but I am preparing to be alone for the rest of my life. Story 40. I am in my 50s. I spent most of my time in clubs and similar places, which is not great for long-term relationships, but is great if you are just out to have fun. I had a new girlfriend about every 2 weeks, which is not really something to brag about. Story 41. Late 20s to early 30s. Keep in mind that coronavirus disease and the political and social climate over the last decade really disrupted things. The dating scene is demonstrably worse than it used to be. Story 42. In my early 20s, I partied a lot. By my mid-30s, I was more established and had found some niches where I was performing beyond expectations. Women in their late 20s were more interested. Story 43. If by dating you mean having casual relationships, I would say ages 26 to 29. Using Hinge and creating a solid profile, working out, maintaining good grooming, having a steady, decent income, and no roommates are helpful factors. If you mean fulfilling relationships, it was when I met my fiancée and we became serious. It is more stable and meaningful than casual encounters. I could have been with more women, but I don't drink or go to bars, which limited my opportunities. Everyone is different. I traveled a lot for work and don't like to cook, so I met and connected with a fair number of waitresses. Story 44, 27 to 28. After that, things went downhill quickly, partly because of coronavirus disease, but mostly because by then I had matched with almost everyone I was going to match with on the dating applications. Story 45. I am 29 years old, and lately, within the last year, I feel like I get laid constantly. Sometimes it is a recurring thing, sometimes a one-time thing, but it is very easy. I meet a lot of divorced women my age already, but I have never been married myself. I hope it gets better as I get older. I had no game in my teens and early 20s, though. I hardly got laid then. Now it happens all the time. Story 46. 18 to 25 years old. Honestly, it was out of control. I am in my 30s now and still do very well for myself, but I have had to scale things back due to work and having to pay bills. Story 47. Depends on how you define peak. Quantity is probably in the mid to late 20s. Quality has steadily improved as I have come to know myself and understand what I need and deserve, so now. Story 48. From my limited experience having recently re-entered the dating scene, dating is much more enjoyable at 30 than it ever was when I was younger. I receive a lot more attention and admiration for being myself than I did earlier in life or even within my last relationship. This has been really helpful for my psyche and overall sense of self-worth. Story 49. I'm at my peak. I have been on a tear since I turned 27, and I am now turning 33. Multiple girlfriends, a threesome, multiple friends with benefits, one-night stands, foreign women. Good career, cool city. I am interested in settling down, but I am picky. Story 50. From ages 20 to 31, I was definitely pursued by the most women. It is hard to pick a peak. Define peak. I am recently single in my mid-30s, and dating is still fun. Story 51. Hopefully not in my 20s. I was in a long-term relationship with a woman from age 24 to 28. I left her because things were no longer working. I have been single for most of the last 5 years, except for a few short-term situations with women I was not very invested in. Every woman I had been interested in since then manipulated me and gave me just enough attention until another man showed interest in her. Story 52. I was in a relationship from 18 to 24 years old. After the breakup, I went on the apps and got way more dates and matches than I thought I could. I slept with 4 women in 1 week at one point and caught feelings for the 4th one. I was only single for 3 months. Story 53. Ages 18 to 35. There is a balance between looking better when younger but knowing more and having more resources when older. While there were undoubtedly many missed opportunities when younger due to a lack of knowledge and experience, I don't think anything could have been done better then. However, when older, I could have stayed in better shape, which would have helped. As you get older, your friends and eventually yourself drop off the radar due to marriage and work obligations. You cannot regain your youth, so make the most of it when you are younger. Story 54. Early 40s for the 3 years after my first wife died. It is amazing how many women are willing to sleep with you on the first date once you have proven you are reliable, are 6 feet tall, and make $100,000 or more a year. It was much easier than my college years, for sure. Story 55. I am 42. I got divorced 2 years ago and had a significant transformation. I use dating apps on and off when I get bored. Last week, I unpaused my profile. I received 30 likes in 2 hours, then paused it again. I only talk to the very attractive ones and see where it goes. I have been intimate with 2 of those women so far and have a few more dates lined up. I am also still talking with several others on the back burner. I am actually pretty selective. Otherwise, it could be much more. I find it hard not to call women by the wrong name or confuse details I have shared about myself if I am talking to more than 2 or 3 at a time. I wish I could multitask better. I know it might seem inappropriate and it is not fulfilling, but I am not ready for more. I do not have any male friends, so it is not what it seems either. I feel lonely, and I think that is one reason I do this. Story 56. Latter years of high school. A growth spurt put me at 6 feet 3 inches just before junior year. I did not know that mattered. Story 57. When I was 19, I slept around a lot and had a few friends with benefits. That was when I met and started dating my fiancée. Story 58. When I was about 22, but do not be startled. This is more outside of your power than it is dependent on you. I am sure I have not deteriorated or whatever. I have my own family, way less time, lack of interest, and so on. This also applies to other people my age. It is a reflection of life phases and statistics, not so much of anything else. Story 59. 17 and 18. The only girlfriend I ever had. I am 25 now. She was awful, so it is ironic to say it was my peak, but it is sadly true. Story 60. Once, I met a woman on a night out. We kissed and touched in a dark corner of a pub. Unfortunately, she had to leave. I ended the night in bed with another woman. A splendid night. Story 61. If I were to die today, I would say it was during the year 2020. Something about all that coronavirus in the air. I had just broken up with my ex and somehow managed to sleep with a different woman almost every weekend that summer. However, I don't think I have truly peaked yet. That will be when I get married or sleep with an adult film star. Story 62. I am 24 and I have only been in one relationship. The only high point in that difficult situation was the final breakup, but I digress. For me, it was when I was 17 or 18. Story 63. Probably right now, mid-30s to be honest, but it could have been earlier if I had gotten my act together. A few factors that differ between now and my 20s. 1. Somewhat stable job, career, and pay, though I need a raise because the cost of living keeps outrunning my pay. Better physical shape. Overall better presentation, including fashion, skincare, haircut, and style. Developed personality with jokes, conversation topics, hobbies, and more. Thinking with the right head instead of the wrong one. The big thing I probably don't have yet that others may consider important is a house. However, I'm still getting opportunities. Also, I believe it is true that stability is attractive. I see you are enlisting soon. Coming back and assimilating into civilian life is going to be your main objective once you're out. I helped some of my friends adjust after they left the military. All I can say is, don't spend all your money on short-term pleasures, and have some sort of plan or goal for what you want to do, whether you stay in or get out. Story 64. When I was young, I used to see many people. In the 1990s, I started having longer-term relationships, including a 2-year relationship, a 7-year relationship, and culminating in my current 19-year marriage. Story 65. Well, in terms of number of partners, early to mid-20s. Lots of social gatherings and similar events. Then I got married, and now I am happier than ever. Story 66. I was attractive when I was young, so I had a decent amount of flings. The ones I actually tried with, 3 in total, ended up, respectfully, not being in a great place to be partners. At 25 to 26, I settled down with one. However, the dating scene now is a nightmare, so it may take a bit to get through the challenges. Story 67. I have had a few relationships in my 20s. My last girlfriend was during the pandemic. I am in my early 30s now, and I feel that having a romantic partner will help me experience great highs and lows. Currently, I am somewhat content to be single. Story 68. I only started having luck with women recently. I am 30 years old, was practically invisible, and had no luck dating. Now I have reached a point where I am going on 1 to 2 dates a week. Story 69. I am 52 years old and have women literally hitting on me all the time, but I am married. Where were these women when I was 25? Story 70. From ages 18 to 25, I used plenty of Fish, eHarmony, Matches, and a few other sites before Tinder was available. I was in college, working, playing sports, and part of a fraternity. I approached most women I could. I am 6 feet tall, athletic, and moderately good-looking. I was always in a relationship or had several best friends with benefits to call on. I think guys can do it. It takes time to develop many positive qualities that women notice. Story 71. In high school was the most interest I got. Straight man working as a theater technician, Half the guys were gay and the girl-to-guy ratio was 4-1. That's how I got my username. I remember at one party I was single, and about 3 girls walked up to me to talk about how they thought I was cute at the closing party for one of the musicals. But I was always happiest when I was in a committed relationship. I've been in 3 serious relationships which didn't occur until after I was in high school. Story 72. Danny was a brilliant, funny, curious, kind, weird, and vibrant woman who seemed to live life to the fullest. She made sure I knew she was pursuing me as I was pursuing her. She wanted me like I wanted her and had no hang-ups about making that known. It did not work out for other reasons, but to this day, I wish her nothing but the best. Story 73. I didn't start dating until I met my wife, around age 36. The one woman I talked to before my wife I was going to date, but things didn't work out. My entire life had been fast casual relationships, fast food, and quick encounters. Story 74. I am facing enlistment soon, and dating now would just make things difficult down the line. What about no love for the barracks bunnies? Story 75. When I met my now wife, I was at my peak dating life. I was actually worth dating instead of just someone with money. My most challenging times were the 4 years in the army, 4 years of college, 2 years of tattooing, and 10 years working in nightclubs alongside other experiences. I was proud to have money despite my flaws. The military presents many broken people with many broken things. It can be tempting to marry the first stripper who tells you her real name. Just hold off on that. Story 76. I guess by definition, now that I am approaching 40, I have been on a date for the first time in the past year. Story 77. About 26 years old. I went through high school, college, Navy officer candidate school, and returned from a Desert Storm deployment. My confidence was high, and I took no nonsense from anyone. You mentioned you were enlisting. There is no reason not to date. All it takes is confidence and no fear of rejection. Both of those can be faked until you acquire those attributes. Story 78. 28 or so. It was a short, wild ride. It ended once I realized I was madly in love with my now wife. Story 79. Maybe around 18 to 24. Those were the best days of my life. Unfortunately, nothing worked out, and so here I am, making the best out of my time. Story 80. What was your excuse for not dating before enlistment? You will make an excuse to avoid doing something you need to do until the end of time. Story 81. From 2026 to the present, was almost married twice but was saved from commitment issues because there were red flags. Story 82. I had a lot of fun and experiences in high school. Lots of flings and girlfriends, some serious and some not. Then, when I left high school, I started dating my now wife. I am glad I got to experience a varied love life and still have a fulfilling lifetime partner. I feel like I won the lottery in that way. Story 83. I had 2 girlfriends in high school. One relationship lasted 3 months. I wasn't really into her, and it was a rebound from rejection. The other lasted 2.5 years. We grew apart and went to different colleges. There were about 3 months of being single between those relationships. I only dated and ended up marrying one girl in college. There was only 1 week between breaking up with the second high school girlfriend and dating the college girlfriend. I don't know how that helps. Story 84. I have never really had a peak. From the age of 15, I have only been single for approximately 12 months, with each relationship ranging from 2 years, 4 years, to 20 years. Story 85. Probably a year or 2 after high school until age 23 when I moved my then girlfriend, now wife, across the country to live with me. Became a dad at 24. Was not very good at the dating scene, to be honest. Story 86. In my mid-20s, I developed a little game. Women my age were experienced and knew what they wanted. I was single most of the time with a few friends with benefits, and I had a blast. Story 87. Ages 28 to 30, peak shape, peak testosterone, peak confidence. I was performing exceptionally well during that time. Now I am 38, have been with someone for over 5 years, and have gained some weight. Story 88. I was once with a girl who was fairly vanilla in the bedroom. She didn't like doggy style and preferred cowgirl. About 18 months in, she opened up sexually to the point where she would demand that I perform oral stimulation at random times. She climaxed quickly from doggy style and reached a peak with anal one morning before work, where she said 5 words that deeply affected me. "Come in my ass, daddy." Story 89. Personally, I think the peak is what you make of it. Why live in the past? I have had great experiences in every decade of my life, except for most of my teenage years because I was quite clueless then. If you are only 25 now, you will be fine. Story 90. Dating gets easier as you get older. I am 43, and my girlfriend is 20. My record for hookups was when I was 41. Story 91. Mid-20s until 33. I am now 34 and have other concerns on my mind, including a chronic condition, job future prospects, and getting fit again after developing the chronic condition and gaining weight. I have slowed down on dating and sex in general. I cannot be bothered to put as much energy into it as I used to. My 20s until my 30s were intense. I had a couple of long-term relationships during those years and was loyal. When I was single, I had many women on rotation. I had to get a burner phone just for the women I was seeing. I started keeping track of all the women I was with. I am in the early 200s. There were weeks when I only slept at home on the weekend. I went from work to a different girl each business day of the week. Yes, it was good. My friends told me I have lived my life and can die in peace. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.